The academia workfloor is male-dominated and women basically have to sacrifice almost everything to get to the top. One of the reasons women make no progress is that age is equal to maternity and because of the assumption that women at some point will want to become mothers. In this new episode, I have a conversation with Michela Borghesan and Caterina Tiburzi about the lack of women at the top within academia. My name is Tina de Keyzer. Please join us in this new episode of the Women's Table. Michela Borghesan is a lecturer at the Faculty of Science and Engineering at the University of Groningen. She has expertise in cellular aging. Besides teaching courses in the area of genetics and molecular biology, she enjoys doing research for a better understanding mechanism of age-related diseases. When she doesn't work, she spends most of her time with her female friends, catching up with her living abroad family, reading comic books and taking long walks. Michela was born and raised by her mom in the south of Italy and lived almost 10 years in England before moving to the Netherlands in 2019. Caterina Tiburzi is a staff researcher at the Astronomical Observatory of Cagliari in Italy, specialized in the study of pulsars observed at radio frequencies. She has 2 bachelor degrees in biological sciences and astronomy and a master degree in astronomy. She did a PhD in physics at the Astronomical Observatory of Cagliari and got her first postdoc at the University of Bielefeld and the Max Planck Institute for Radio Astronomy in Germany, and as a Fanny Fellow her second postdoc at Astron in the Netherlands, before she moved back to Italy. Caterina was born in Bologna and in her spare time she likes to exercise, hike, go to museums, read, write and paint, watch basketball matches, play with dogs and, of course, spend time with her friends. In today's episode, I talked to Michela and Caterina about women in academia and what they think the reasons are that there are so few women at the top in academia. So, Michela and Caterina, welcome and thank you for being here with me today.
Thanks to you, Tina. It's a pleasure.
So, Caterina, I would like to start with you because the last time we talked, you mentioned something very interesting because we all know, of course, the gender bias women experience on the work floor about motherhood, having kids and all sorts of stuff. But you mentioned that women don't only have to deal with bias and judgments on the work floor, they also have to deal with the fact that if they want to find a partner in their personal lives, that there are few men that will accept that women work so many hours.
Yeah, that's correct.
Could you explain this?
Yeah, I think in general, for how women are grown, given the upbringing and the education that we receive, it's way more expected that a woman, typically follows her partner, in general tries to make compromises for her companion. This implies that typically women tend to maybe work less hours. I think it is extremely strange to see a woman thoroughly dedicated to her work, because that is typically the role of the man. I think it is quite complicated for a woman to see as accepted the fact that, for example, being in academia, you typically end up having very strange timetables, or maybe you have to work in the weekend or you have to work in the evening. Sometimes there are deadlines that push you to work during the night even.
Mm-hmm.
And or to travel a lot and to move a lot. So it is way more common that a female partner follows her man around in the various movings than the contrary. I think in general it is way less accepted for a woman to basically care for her job as much as traditionally a man does. And this can bring some problems in the relationship in the moment in which you say, hey, I have a great job opportunity in, I don't know, the US, and shall we go? If it is inverted parties, it's way easier that the woman, maybe after thinking a bit, says yes, and way less easy for a man to do the same.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Michela, what do you think of this? Do you agree with Caterina?
Yes,
What do you think?
totally. I did have experience talking to senior colleagues and professors in my field, biology, and majority of them actually told me about this issue. They said that they found a little bit difficult to bring together family and work. Actually, the professor that have had a linear career without interruption, they were the one that have had the family help mostly. So they stayed in their home country, so they didn't need to travel. They were so lucky that they were job available within academia. They didn't need to leave. So they have partner that were, of course, happy with that. So there was no problem. But some other women that I talked to, a leader as well, they have an issue with family. So because they needed to move, and sometimes the relationship was affected by it. They get divorced or they change partner. This indeed is quite common story, I think, even in young generation. For myself, for example, I did change country during my career. And I can tell you that, of course, this is a common thing to do. But when it comes to bring together a relationship, it affects a lot your life. What I can tell experiences within professor, this is an issue that has been discussed, and partners are essential. The help from the partner is essential. So women that needed to move, majority of the time they did it because the partner needed to move, not because they wanted to. And some of them needed to change job. So they needed to ask their mentor if they could help them to find eventually another place or another group where to pursue their research. They needed to find an alternative or needed to take 1 year of break because of maternal leave. Yes, indeed, this is very common. Sometimes the male counterpart doesn't really understand the effort, how much the women put in the table. They need to take this big change because, for instance, a colleague of mine, she moved completely country, and during this time she gave birth. She left her job, which would eventually have led to a career development, such as professorship. So she decided to left that job to follow the partner, and she took a break of 2 years. And it was very difficult because of the moving of countries to familiarize with everything again. But eventually she got help from the previous professor, so her mentor helped her to get a new job in a new university, to settle down, to start again. But it was really difficult. And it affects a lot your self-esteem, and because you need to take care of the family. When I asked about the reason why she decided to give up, let's say, her career, she said, because my partner, that was the main reason. And family is a big factor that influences a career.
Do you think that women are more likely to give in?
Yes. As Caterina said, is how we have been instructed.
Follow your man.
It's common knowledge that while raising a girl, the girl is expected to not be aggressive, to be extremely well-mannered, educated, feminine, so to not be a tomboy, and so on and so forth. And this really takes a toll on how you develop later on. But it is way more difficult for a woman to step up and say, hey, no, I want to go. And because in the back of your head, and also, of course, you are grown with the idea that a woman should have a family. I mean, while you continue in your academic path and you start to see how many social rules you have to break to be a scientist, I'm a scientist, but in general, to be in academia, it really takes a toll on you. It's something that men not necessarily face. I think it is easier that a woman at some point under this enormous pressure says, okay, that's not for me. Of course, this is not a blame to the women because it's really an enormous pressure.
Because Michela, you sent this research by Bernd Klaus and David Del Alamo, I hope I pronounce it right. Talent identification at the limits of peer review. One of the things I found interesting was that women are more willing to adjust their career for their families. They tend to move to suit their partner's professional career more than men. They normally work fewer hours a week than their partners, and they usually contribute less than half of the income of the family. This is what we are talking about? That women do this?
Well, I guess nowadays, no.
No?
I guess women are trying to change this kind of path. And I can tell that many academic that are in the top, they might have the reversal. Let's say that some of them, they actually earn more and their partner, maybe they are not. But so I can tell you that some younger academic actually are like this. They have partners, they are not academic, and they are willing to be more the leader of the family or the leader of, the economic driven part of the family. So I noticed there is a trend to change this path, trend to change.
Well, that's good news.
Yes, the very new generation, I think, understood that economic independence is essential as a stability. I guess this comes first than sentimental stability, from what I'm understanding at this point. But it's also true that 10 years ago, instead, it was not like this, or maybe few women, the ones that were judged as a virago, or they were judged with a strong temper, characteristic that were among men, they were the one actually that reached to the top. And I was impressed by the fact that still today, in my own country, for example, female professors didn't make it to the top, even though they are still young. Yeah. They are negatively judged by their female counterpart because they have this tendency of having this male, let's say, temper, to be very assertive, to be strong in the way they express themselves. But this is just because they want to be heard. Yeah. And these characteristics are negatively judged by the female colleagues, but positively judged by the male colleagues. Okay. This is just to say there is a tendency to invert this path in the younger generation of female academics. I understand.
Okay. I don't think that these kind of characters are always also appreciated by men. I think it depends a lot on the environment and education of the men themselves. But I agree that there was this tendency, and I'm also quite pleased now to see that women with also maybe a less, let's say, masculine traits in the character now are also reaching to the top. Very few and very slowly, they are also reaching to the top. That is a symbol that there is a change ongoing, in the sense that you don't have to be necessarily this extremely aggressive, loud. That doesn't mean that is bad. But it also means that now we have also other different examples of women characters that are rising to top level of the fields. And this is extremely good, I think, because, of course, especially when you are a young, PhD or PhD student, or a young student in general in the university, if you can see, and maybe you're not that aggressive, you're not that assertive, and you see that also women who are more similar to you reached certain levels or just became researchers and so on, I think it's very inspiring for them. Yeah.
Because do you know any successful women within academia? And with successful, I mean women at the top. Do you know any women who you think are an inspiration to you?
Currently or historically?
Currently,
yes. I can definitely think to a few of variety of characters. I think for me it was almost soothing to know, to see, well, especially when I was at the university, but also now, because it's extremely soothing to see that there are such accomplished female figures at the top of your field. It almost feels like something is telling you, you can do it as well. And there is no limit because they reached it. So of course you can reach it too. And I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to reach it, but there is the possibility for you to do it.
Michela.
Yes, I know many women successfully achieving the top of their career, starting from scratch. These are mainly microbiologists, because I remember that I was following some of them when I was at the university, but some of them won the Nobel Prize last year, like Jennifer Doudna, the Charpentier. So they started working on basics of microbiology, but then after 10, 15 years, they keep, while there was no one that was interested in what they were doing, but they keep going and they keep, they were really, really focusing on their work and they wanted to keep going despite several problems with their research. And the topic at that time, microbiology, maybe was not the spotlight. But their discovery actually opened a new way to change the genome and to cure future disease, genetic disorders. And now this technology will revolutionize modern medicine. So that's how they got the Nobel Prize. Women like them, of course, an inspiration for biologists because they show that you can do it.
Yeah.
And it's not just men that can win the Nobel Prize, It's possible also for women, and in a shorter term, while you're still alive, let's say, because sometimes it was quite rare, right? Especially for women, to be recognized as the top of your career. You need to wait. I can tell you another name. So the rector of the University of Groningen, Cisca Wimenga, she is amazing, but also Petra Rudolph. They inspire the new generation of women because they are both scientists. They come from that background. But also I can tell you some politicians, such as Angela Merkel, right?
Yeah.
Who was a biologist. She is a biologist by training. Of course, she changed career, but still she's an inspiration for what is a moral value, right? And so you can still believe that science can help you to build also human value and understand that you can be a better person by studying this, enrolling in this subject, I think.
Yeah. And what qualities, characteristics does a woman need to be an inspiration? What qualities does she need to inspire other women? Caterina?
I think that, first of all, that it is good that there are, as I was saying before, a variety of different figures, because, again, that tells you that there is not just one way to arrive to certain levels. Women, unfortunately, I think nowadays are still required to be exceptional to make it as women in academia, like to become professional academics. They are still required to be exceptional. That is not something that is necessarily required to men.
That's true.
So I think from my side, for example, when I was at the university and I was studying, I think that actually the women researchers that I could see every day and who inspired me the most were actually maybe not even the most successful ones, but actually the people who I could see maybe taking their times to think about the problems, to work deep on the problems, to work hard. They were communicative. They were there for us. They were not taking us lightly with our questions and so on and so forth. And for me, and they were also, available, like to talk, to discuss, about scientific problems. They were showing some moral traits. I think for me, back then it was, being able to see the human side of the scientist and see that even by maintaining the emotional trait, they were there, they made it. As researchers, for me, was incredibly inspiring. And this for women who I could see every day, maybe at the university. Historically, there have been a number of extremely inspiring female figures. The person who opened my field of research is a woman who discovered pulsars during her PhD, is Dame Professor Jocelyn Bell. I was lucky enough to meet her at a conference a few years ago, and she's so down to earth. She spoke to me, she was extremely nice, and knowing the strength with which she defended her discovery, she brought it through. Knowing all of this is incredibly inspiring for us. She's a rock star for us, for the people in my field. Yeah, I think it is extremely inspiring to see also that women who made it to the top, not made it to the top, it's not even correct to say made it to the top, but made it with the life in academia, do not discourage you from pursuing it. Typically they are honest, it is not the easiest life in the world, but they make you known that you can do it as well.
Yeah.
And they don't let you down when you ask questions, when you want to discuss, or when you show interest. They are there for you. And again, there is a human side on this in which they show you that this kind of life, for how much difficult it is possible.
Yeah. Michela, would you like to add something?
Definitely, I agree with Caterina. The human aspect of the figure of the female scientist on the top, but also the human aspect is extremely important. I agree. I still remember that actually my professor of microbiology, she was the more popular one because she was like a mother.
Yeah.
And again, but she was also very tough. Actually, she pretended a lot from her student. It's not that because she looked like a mother in the way how she approached you, that looked like that she was not pretending from you as a student. Actually, she was asking the most difficult question during the examinations, and she wants you to be the best student. But at the same time, she was offering you a cake to go to her office or take regular time as a professor for you and ask, did you understand that? Because you can tell me if you didn't. I mean, I want to know that you understood what I am talking about. And she was asking a question coming to you and say, do you have a boyfriend? You know, and she was very personal.
Yeah.
So indeed, that was inspiring. And I can tell you also, I was looking with curiosity of the opposite. So female professors were not like this. They were more rigid. And it was difficult to, indeed, at that time, understand what was the best role model to follow.
Yeah.
It was not easy at all. Yeah, but definitely the human side I agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. Something completely different. Because I always say that we women, we need to include a man as well. If we want to achieve something on the work floor, around the house, we need to achieve something. We need the man. Gloria Steinem, the famous feminist, she said that women will never be equal outside the house until men are equal inside the house. Do you think that men are aware enough of when it comes to the position of women?
Very good question. Very good question.
These are called the Illuminati, man. I would say.
Oh God.
What do you think, Michela?
There is an enlightenment, I guess, between people, men that understand women of this modern society very much independent, and they want to be independent, but at the same time, they don't want to lose the opportunity to have a family and to keep that sort of possibility to still enjoy each part of the feminine that comes with desire of building a nest, how to say. It's part of some culture, it's part of the culture, the value of some culture, and it's part of belonging, feel protected somehow in a safe environment and stability. I don't think it's a wide percentage of men that understand structure if the family is the basic to have gender equality and to build on that. Many men still don't get it. It is tough to get into the discussion because when we talk about working related matters at home, there is still a huge stigma in terms of need to take care about the children, education, or need to take care about the homework, work at home, things to. And I like a lot what Silvia Federici, an anthropologist that talks about the inverted Marxist concept about a consumistic society and capitalism based on the concept that the mother needs to be at home, ready to take care of the family in order to sustain the capitalist market, the consumistic and the work of the men. So the men take a job that allow to gain money, while the women at home take care of the family, make children and sustain this kind of mechanism. And the work that the female does at home, the mother, is not paid.
Yeah.
Of course, is a work that is not paid.
No, it's not.
And to break this, the work should be paid. So, because this is, in the capitalist society, that this is work, even though it's not paid, but still you help the society to grow and to keep forward. And if the work would be paid, so then we will allow the women to choose if they want to do the work at home or not. It's a choice.
Yeah.
I think it's also it is not only at home, but also on the workplace itself. I have been lucky to meet some of my male colleagues who actually want to understand and want to listen to you, want to listen to how you are experiencing things. You need to have a very good empathy or a very specific kind of education as a man to be willing to listen and to be willing to admit that others feel different from what you feel. I have also experienced maybe some extremely good-hearted male colleagues who really don't understand when you bring up a certain problem, like how you experience, for example, an aggressive workplace. Yeah. For me, but I think also for again, for many women, again, due to our upbringing, we are not used to a certain level of aggressivity on the workplace. Then you can get used to it. There is, we don't discuss it, of course. You can get used to it, and you do. But the impact, the time that it is required to you to get used to it they are demanding. They're more demanding than for men, because typically the academic environment is a male-shaped environment. And so for a man, it's less complicated to adapt to a workplace that has been shaped on them, no? I have a few example of male colleagues who are actually willing to listen and to go back to their steps when you say, hey, look, I felt it as not right that you say this and this thing, you shouldn't say this, or this is really hurtful. But they are really few. And many of them, when you bring up problems, they are really not receptive. They have difficulties to understand that there is such a different way of feeling, such a different way of receiving the same situations that for a man might be just barely stressful, for a woman maybe extremely burdening. And I saw a lot of women like really putting up with situations that I could understand for them were extremely challenging, and like going through them, and then maybe the comments were, a bit weak, too emotional from their colleagues. So it's not only at home. I mean, if you combine the two aspects, what you experience at home, like for the additional burden that you have, taking care of the house, taking care of the family, if you have a partner and a family, or taking care of maybe if you are not with someone, of your solitude, because then if you are a woman who decides to pursue the career while their partners do not follow them, means that they are alone. And so they also have to face the fact that they did this choice. So you combine this with what happens to the workplace is an explosive mix, really.
Yeah, I get it. So what about other women? Because sometimes I have a feeling that there are a lot of women who don't get it either. Of course, I'm all for sisterhood and women empowerment, and I love my fellow sisters, and there are a lot of out there, like the two of you. But there are also women who just don't understand it. They think women complain, they are whining. The other day, I read this comment on social media. This was some female-related topic, and there was this woman, and her comment was like, I'm so done with this gender hype. And I was like, oh, it's a hype. Okay. I didn't know that, but thank you for informing me. So, and there are a lot of women who think like that. So, Michela, what do you think of these women, and what would you like to say to them?
Thanks for asking, Tina. This is extremely true. And again, I think it's a problem of knowledge or understanding other women and put themselves in their shoes. I think these women possibly they have to learn the issues, and they possibly don't, or maybe they assume that there is not such a problem. And they maybe don't want to see it. And from the experience I have had, it's very common that when you express yourself in a very assertive way, when in academia, when you're trying to be direct in what you want, in the way how you want it, other women perceive you not well, majority of the time. And when you want things done, if you are not so nice, let's say, the way you're perceived very bad. I would like to say to these women, of course, there is this problem with it. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. That's true. And it can be perceived from a woman say things in a harsh way or hard way. It might come like something not good, but I guess women are changing in the way how they express themselves to be heard. But if there is more inclusive and more understanding between women, I think this issue might be solved. So I would say to other women, ask yourself why that woman is so, you need to be so assertive, so direct, and to be heard, right? I mean, ask the question instead of judging first, right? I would say that. Ask the question why.
Yeah, that's very good advice. Thank you. Caterina, what would you like to say to them?
For what I would like to say to them, I think I want to try to give some kind of reason of why this happens. I mean, besides, I think that probably it's a sort of an instinct, because you see such a small number of women who, for us in academia, you see such a small number of women who become researchers and the like, who get the PhD. Well, now is getting much better, I think. I think that something triggers in you saying, okay, another woman is a threat, because there are such a few women that somehow you start to assume that the places for women are limited, that if you are a woman there, it means that you can be the only one in that group. You can be that such a small number of women in that group of research. And so if another woman comes up, it means that necessarily another woman might have to step down.
Yeah.
But of course, I can see where it comes from, but again, it's just a society and workplace bias.
Yes.
And actually, I think, what would I say to these women? I would say that this is an extremely poor vision of life. I think that working with women saved a part of my career, but also personally, I find extremely rewarding, working, especially when I have students, for example, female students. For me, it's an extremely rewarding process to tutor them, to supervise them, to be close to, because I know how much difficult it is, especially if you are maybe not like a woman who goes down like an axe in the workplace. I know how difficult it can be to make it to remain in that workplace, to manage your mental health as well. For me, for example, it's extremely rewarding to be able to supervise female students so that I can be there for them. I think really this is, for me, is one of the best things of academia.
Yeah. So you would also like to be an inspiration for them?
If I can, more than willingly, yes, of course. I mean, I don't know if I can be of an inspiration, but I would really much like so.
Yeah, okay. That sounds nice. Michela?
Yes, definitely. I see Caterina very good on that. I have experience, actually, Caterina helped me build on positive, let's say, in period where I was discourage myself in my career or something.
Yeah.
So she's very supportive. I think she can be a great mentor. I can tell that. I would love to be a student.
Many thanks.
Yes, definitely. Yes, Tina, this is important. Women in academia need to support each other because you have many self-doubt and imposter syndrome comes very often. And know that there is a woman that you can count on. And I got a lot of help from women as well during my career.
Yeah.
I can tell that this is fundamental.
Yeah, okay. Well, we can blame men in general. I don't mean all men, please, for not supporting us or being hostile to women, other women, or we can blame ourselves. We can talk about the imposter syndromes, but still there are women who make it to the top. So what is the difference between the ones who make it to the top and the ones who don't make it to the top because they feel not supported enough, they feel not empowered enough, maybe they feel being let down? Because you mentioned Siska Meimenga and Petra Rudolph.
Yes.
I believe you told me last time we talked that you talked to Petra Rudolph and she said she found the inspiration within herself.
Yes.
She was her own inspiration.
Yes. Indeed, I asked this question to her and I like this answer a lot. And I asked again the same question to a professor I talked to and they all said the same. So they all told me that they wanted to do something good and they wanted to build upon the past and improve things that they were left behind. They love what they do so much and they found the inspiration in what they see. They have a vision.
Yeah.
They really have a vision within themselves. It's not about others. So they are inspired women. That's what I understood from what I perceive from what they said and what they told me.
Yeah.
So it's an inner force.
Yeah, an inner force. Yeah, that's interesting because I think, how do you inspire yourself?
I inspire myself with talking to other women and asking themselves, ask their life how, if they struggle, if they have. Yeah, my answer is that.
Okay, Caterina, how do you inspire yourself?
I think for me, it has been also in these years extremely important to see I was having some recognition from my colleagues, both male and female. That I could see that people were trusting me and trusting my judgment, were giving me trust. Simply, they were giving me faith. They were confident that I could have made it. But I think for me, the most important thing has been in these years to see when I was times in which I try to do some scientific tasks by myself, or I bring forward some ideas by myself, that I can be successful. It is important for me to see that even without the support that I luckily have had through these years, because I had a lot, I have to be honest, I had a lot of support from my friends, my colleagues, my family, and so on. So I had a lot of support, but it has been extremely important to see that even when I was alone for some reasons and so on and so forth, I could continue to go forward, and that I didn't crumble down dramatically under the pressure, under maybe the isolation, especially like during Corona and so on.
Yeah.
So for me, that was extremely important, because it meant, okay, even if you are going to be in the most difficult situations, you can get out of it.
Yeah.
By yourself. So you don't need the Prince Charming coming on the white horse to rescue you.
Yeah, that's a beautiful answer, Caterina. Yeah, okay. Michela, you also mentioned that everything starts with the structure of the family.
Yes.
Yeah. What do you mean everything starts with the structure of the family?
For instance, I believe that as a kid, you learn from your parents, right? It's an imprinting that you receive. If you have this binary, that female and male, that are your parents, and they do have completely different role, and you learn that the male figure does certain things while the female does others, you start to absorb these notions and understand that life is in binary, right?
Yeah.
In terms of gender, in terms of what is right to do for a female, what is right to do for a male.
Yeah.
So the structure of the family is the first natural path that is established when your mind is start to form, let's say, as a kid. And there's nothing else that you can do. If you don't change that, it's difficult that in the adult life, the mind is plastic. You can still learn. But I can tell you that I'm the children of a single mother. So I learned that you need to work a lot as a woman to achieve things. And you can do it independently without a man. And actually, my father said to me all the time, you need to work. There's nothing. So I was lucky. But I know that there are some friends of mine that have been thought the opposite, or female men don't like, they don't want to marry women that work. Some friend of mine grew up in this kind of environment. So indeed, they didn't finish their study, or so the environment shape a lot. The family environment shape a lot the future, some decision, I guess. My modest opinion, of course.
No, I get it. I also think that as parents, you have a boy and a girl, that it is important that you raise them equally within the household. I know about this couple, and after having dinner, the husband and the son go lie down on the couch, and the mother and the daughter are doing the dishes, and they clean the table. So this is how the girl was raised, and the boy as well. The son looks at his father and he copies the behavior of his father, and the girl does the same. So I do agree that if you raise your children the same and say to your son, well, you have to help within the household as well, then you get a different grown-up man later on.
I totally agree with you, Tina.
Yeah. Caterina, would you like to add something?
I agree that, of course, the upbringing that you have shapes and mold the way in which you think and your brain. I think in good and in bad. So, of course, again, if you have certain models at home, it's quite typical that then you fall into the same place. At the same time, I think that in general, while this makes things more difficult, it makes more difficult for people to change. I think it shouldn't be seen as something that you cannot absolutely escape, in the sense that Again, of course, it is more difficult because you have a certain way of thinking given by your education, but your education doesn't only happen in the house, for example. So in my case, my mother, for example, was working in part-time, but like she has always been an extreme sci-fi enthusiastic. So for example, she was the one introducing me to things that then shape my own life for good, like Star Wars and Star Trek and Dune and whatever. And now I'm an astronomer. But for example, I mean, of course, again, I had the example of my parents being like my mom half part-time, my father full-time, extremely accomplished man, and my mom doing part-time and houseworks and so on. But for me, I mean, that was not the only thing that shaped my life. Like, that's why I think school is extremely fundamental. Like, I can name a number of female professors who really gave me some turns in life that were crucial, like for my development, for the things that I love. Example of women outside my house who loved culture, who loved, besides like my mom, for example, but who loved culture, who loved art. So that besides science, but I mean, who gave me some more complex, some more complete view. So luckily, I think that there is, and also, of course, people then develop by themselves and they can become conscious of what and how their upbringing affected their life. But luckily, we don't have only an example of what happens inside our houses, but there is also school, and school should be maybe the alternative family if your own family doesn't give you the structure that you need and that you want.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah, I agree. Because we talk about men working against women on the work floor at home. We talk about women who work against women who think this is a gender hype. But isn't it our own responsibility to get to the top?
You mean, Tina, to the top of the career or to the top
Isn't it our own responsibility to make a career, to have a career, to get to the top, instead of saying, well, the board of the university worked against me and they didn't give me the position and the female colleagues were mean to me. Don't you think it's our own responsibility to have a career? This is what I meant when I asked, what is the difference between women who do make it to the top and the women who don't make it to the top? So isn't it the responsibility of yourself to make it to the top?
I think it is a partial yes and a partial no, in the sense that it cannot be black and white, of course. But I think it shouldn't be our responsibility, in the sense that if it was a fully meritocratic, completely equal system where people are raised the same and you have the same opportunity, then it shouldn't be your responsibility. The harsh reality is that it is not an ideal system. You have to find a compromise, because on one hand, you cannot think that everything that is happening to you is your responsibility. This would be insane and very unfair also. On the other hand, unfortunately, it is true that minorities in different fields, unfortunately, are the first one who have to trigger the change. It is very rare that minorities are kept into account by the majorities, thanks to the majorities. So unfortunately, there is always the need for the minorities to see themselves from outside, understand what is happening, get an idea of the context, and then step up. I think it's a really unfair and unfortunate situation. This shouldn't be the case, but the reality is that it is. I think that in our case, I mean, of course, I'm not just talking of women who make it to the top, but just women, for example, who manage to remain in academia in general and so on. I think it is a matter, let's say, of dividing the burdens. That is, a single woman, an individual woman, cannot take all the responsibilities on herself. Like, you cannot fight your boss because he's I'm inventing now. You cannot fight altogether your boss because he's unfair to you, as well as your colleagues, as well as the gender imbalance in the conferences of the invited speakers, etc., etc. What happens to your students, and so on and so forth. If it is a battle that is in your possibilities, you should take it. It's something that you have to know yourself very well to understand where your limits are, because of course if you have a breakdown, then of course it's not useful anymore. You cannot strain yourself to death, no? I think it is important that you know your limits, but when you see a battle to take, you should take it. And it is in your reach, you should take it.
Okay.
The battles that are not in your reach, some other women will take. So it is important also to not blame each other, because sometimes I also see, like, maybe I see maybe a female student who maybe don't step up to some clear injustice. And inside me, I feel, dang, you should do it.
Yeah.
But then I could say the same to myself, and I have to realize, okay, you should not devastate yourself to take upon certain battles. It is a process. It's going to be a long process. Yeah. Take the battles that you can, fight the battles that you can fight, talk to others, because this is a shared war. I'm talking in war metaphors, but it is a shared fight to step up. I have to involve your male colleagues. And yeah, of course, it is partly is your responsibility, of course, because if you don't do it, nobody else will for you.
No.
But again, it is not only your responsibility. This is a joint fight.
Yeah. Okay. Michela.
Yes, add on that and develop on the fact, because some certain universities, certain institutions are based on government funding, right?
Yeah.
And they should offer, actually, as Caterina was mentioned before, opportunity to women to stay in academia. In this case, for example, we talk about quotas, no? Or opportunities for women to be elected to reach the top, because you need to provide to certain minority the opportunity.
Yeah.
So if you don't do that, okay, we talk about responsibility. It cannot be only taken by the single person. This kind of responsibility need to be a collective one, and in this case, public funded institution such as university that need to acknowledge there is this problem of minority, and we know in many European university as well as American university, the numbers of female top professor are definitely lower than male professors. So it's a global problem. It's a responsibility. Yeah. Therefore, intervention need to be done. In this case, is more shared responsibility for in that case, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for those beautiful answers. Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Last question. What is your advice for women, and in this particular case, women within academia who strive maybe not for a management position, but for an equal career within academia, and they feel overwhelmed by everything we just talked about? What is your advice for those women? Caterina.
That's a good question. I think, first of all, it is important to have people with which you can confront and you can speak with. I have learned personally that even when you don't think that there are people who can talk with you, there are. Maybe sometimes they are a bit hidden, but they are. Do not remain isolated. Never remain isolated. That is very dangerous for also mental health and professional life. In general, I mean, personally, from my personal point of view, across the years, I have tend to favor maybe collaborations and, like in the academic place, with people I was feeling comfortable with than maybe with more hyper successful projects and so on, with people I had difficulties working with.
Yeah.
But for me personally, what was extremely important was the knowledge that I could have relatively close people and collaborators with which I could not only have a good scientific work, but also a good personal connection. Just the fact that you know that you are on the same wavelength with your collaborators and that you can be free of expressing yourself, you are not going to be judged. So that for me has the most important thing. The other thing is a bit sad if you want, but in the sense, life in academia, I think in general is not easy. For a woman is even less easy. So a bit you should prepare a bit yourself, because you have to be relentless, to be ready to not give up. It's not really something that I enjoy saying for real, from the bottom of my heart, but it is important to remember that you can make it. There is nothing that prevents you from making it. And this is a real truth. It is a difficult environment. It is a difficult job. It takes a toll on you, but there is nothing that prevents you from arriving to be a researcher, to be a woman in academia.
Wow. Thank you, Caterina. Michela.
Support is essential, and I might suggest extracurricular activities as well as getting support from your own peers. So your colleagues within work, but especially outside. I would say building up on other things that you like in life. There can be music, can be sports, or can be other sort of activities. So your network need to be variegated. So because if you stay always in the same environment, sometimes it might be not healthy in terms of keep, having that. It's too restrictive somehow. So maybe explore outside. So when I was a PhD student, I was doing other activities, for instance. So I could talk with students from other department, talk to students from University of Arts, creative colleagues. You still talk about your issue, but in a different way. Making new friends, playing music. I mean, all activities that help your mind to, loosen a little bit of that stress that comes. That helped. It was helpful.
Okay, so find people you can depend on, Caterina, and Michela, people you can hang out with, people you can have a good time with.
Yes.
To keep your spirits up.
More than people you can depend on, people you can rely on, let's say.
Yeah.
You're forced to depend on some people at certain levels.
A mentor, I would say, right?
A mentor,
a mentor
is important.
Okay. Thank you, Michela and Caterina. I hope our conversation today will inspire a lot of women within academia or women in general who strive for a position at the top to just go for it. Follow your heart and be a warrior. Caterina, you just mentioned a war, the fight. Let's be warriors. I would like to end with the ending of my episode with Chantal Schinkels, author of the book The IT Girl, How to Survive in a Male-Dominated Work Environment. And she says, make alliances with the women around you. Make sure you can trust each other and help each other forward. Stand behind each other and learn from each other. Make a pact and stick to it. We are the wolves. We can make a difference together. We have the strength and the power to change things. No government or company can compete with that.
Oh, I love that. Yes. Thank you, Tina. Thanks.
Thank you again, Michela and Caterina, for this very inspiring conversation. I hope that the women who listen to our episode will feel encouraged and get the strength to inspire themselves and just go for that position at the top. In the next episode, I talk to Cheyenne Small. Cheyenne is a trans woman and we talk about her youth, her life, and her decision to become a woman in every sense and meaning of the word. Cheyenne is a transformational coach, a speaker, and she roots for diversity, inclusion, and gender equality. Thank you all for listening. Please feel free to reach out to me. I would love to hear your story. My name is Tina de Keyzer, and this is the Women's Table.